Now, as Dr. Panda very aptly said, that all along we have been concentrating on what is happening to cardiovascular system and kidneys in diabetes. And very rightly, particularly whenever we talk about cardiovascular disease, but we never realize that the total quantum of infections in developing parts of the world are very high. And they have their own impact on all chronic diseases. You see, I still remember when I started my DM, Professor Ahuja said that, when I became a physician, the total quantum of sickness in India was 90% infections and 10% of non-infectious diseases. When in the Western world, it was totally reverse. And even today, when the total quantum of infectious diseases in the Western world is 10%, non-communicable disease is 90%. And in Indian subcontinent, it continues to be 60 and 40%. And that's why probably it's very important to understand and comprehend the contribution of infections in causing discomfort to patients with diabetes. All of us know the magnitude of morbidity and mortality that diabetes causes. Now, Panda was just now telling us about the impact of COVID in the current times. After 1 year of that pandemic, 2 million people have succumbed to COVID. But hardly anybody realizes that 4.2 million people succumbed to diabetes last year, which is much worse, and it is perennial. It is not there's something that's going to get better tomorrow, because we didn't see it getting better for the last 40 years. And the huge global data shows for a long time, not today alone, diabetes is the fourth leading cause of death globally, including the Western world. Now, very early, decades back, when I was looking at how diabetics ultimately succumb, most of the data that was available in the literature was from more privileged parts of the world, where, data collection was better, hospital records were better. So I thought, let me look at the records of our own institution for a decade and look at how do people die in this part of the world. I'm saying, like patients with diabetes, what is the ultimate event? Because that time, people had just started talking about what happens to heart, kidney, to diabetes, which are life-limiting complications of diabetes, then too many morbidities because of whatever happens, because of peripheral vascular disease, diabetic feet, retinal disease. So we looked at the data about a decade, from 1987 to 1996 at Sher-e Kashmir Institute of Medical Sciences. The in-house data, the mortality data, analyzed all the records of 1 decade to find out what causes death in different people, and particularly concentrating on diabetic population. And this data we published in 1999 in Diabetes Research and Clinical Practice, this decade's data, where we showed that most of the diabetics do succumb to infections when it comes down to hospitalization. Then second comes chronic renal failure, which again was a reflection of a relatively poor control of diabetes. And then would come a coronary artery disease and cerebrovascular disease and other things. And this impact of infection on the mortality was in type 1 diabetics, which you can see quite predominantly. And it was in a similar way in patients with type 2 diabetes. Now, when we published this data, many people thought because we may not have that good a health structure, infections are not probably getting treated. Is it possible that this reflects what is happening widely in an area like an Indian subcontinent, or it is unique to that place only? And then there was a data published from PJ Chandigarh a year later. And in this particular slide, you will see the data of PGI publication and our data compared. And those red bars represent PGI Chandigarh's data, and the bluish bars represent the data from Sher-e Kashmir Institute of Medical Sciences, Srinagar. And again, you will see even at PGI Chandigarh, the number one cause of death was infections. Now, what is important to realize is that when we are treating diabetes and when we are trying to modulate the potential for coronary artery disease, when we are trying to protect the kidneys, we give statins from 40th birthday onwards. We give them much earlier if there are other comorbid conditions present. And then, believing that over a period of decades, there will be an impact on the prospective coronary artery disease. Or in a similar fashion, we reduce blood pressures respectively. We give ACE inhibitors, ARBs. And now in the current times, we have been started talking about SGLT2 inhibitors to prevent or retard the progression of the kidney disease. But in comparison to that, to sepsemia, you look at urinary tract infection that ultimately turns out to be, let's say, a perinephric abscess or emphysema pyelonephritis. Treat this episode well for a fortnight. It is totally taken care of. So again, meaning that probably at initial stages, infections are not given the cognizance and importance in diabetics that they deserve. So again, what we said was not a fluke. It was more universal. And this again tells us that, you look at infections, average mortality at 49. And not only that, it would also impact the morbidity and mortality in people who have other comorbidities. Somebody has a renal dysfunction, stable renal diabetic kidney disease, and now develops an overwhelming septicemia and further aggregates an acute on chronic kidney disease, and it may never revert back to where the stability was there. Or during an extensive infection, where there was a barely stable coronary artery disease, throws out a myocardial infarction. Common infections that we found out from the records people succumb to: urinary tract infections. Tuberculosis used to be quite common and continues to be common. I've seen hordes of people whom we saw as bilateral pneumonias, treated them for pyogenic pneumonias. People got better, but then we could find out that there was an underlying tuberculosis. We needed to treat that. So, skin and soft tissue infections, all of us have seen these huge patches of cellulitis. Bacterial pneumonias, a very common thing. Diabetic feet infection, pretty commonly contributing to. We did not find a huge cohort of fungal infections, even though there were episodic cases of fungal infections, but not as a huge contributor to mortality. Now, among the organisms in most of the infections that we published were staph was quite common, Escherichia coli, Klebsiella, and Pseudomonas. Quite a few cases we found out in that. If we look at that 10 years data, almost 34% significant infections contributed in 34% to morbidity in our population, which again was a reflection of an overall increased presence of infectious diseases in our community. We published some data in the same people who did not make it, who ultimately had emphysema pyelonephritis, those difficult diabetic feet that all of you have seen where we need to do amputations and come late, and such people usually, if they have renal dysfunction, get worse. And we also saw, quite few of our patients, these Amarnath Ji Yatra occurs every summer in the valley. And people go very high in the altitude where, temperatures are very low. And quite few people were brought up from there who had missed either an insulin or an oral hypoglycemic or got pneumonias, and came a bit late from that to our own institution. And out of a host of many people, every year, dozens of them do land up in our own institution. But quite few also succumbed because they reached very late. They were very old. They had concomitant complications. And they had been missing drugs for quite some time. Another thing that we found out, that tuberculosis being very common, we also found out that a significant number of them, apart from diabetics with tuberculosis, also have concomitant hypocortisol state. And when this infection of any sort subsequently becomes overwhelming, if somebody has a tuberculosis or has a quiescent tuberculosis and has this adrenocortical involvement, develops a septicemia-like sickness, his underlying tendency to develop hypocortisol state becomes manifest, because under stable conditions, he might be secreting significant or reasonable amounts of steroids within the body. But if there is an overwhelming infection, he develops not only a septicemic shock, which basically is an Addisonian crisis, and the morbidity and mortality increases steeply. There's some data which was published 3 decades back from Odisha only, which shows that in 34% of type 2 diabetic patients, infection was sole or contributory factor in their demise. A similar data published from Jaipur by Dr. Nigam, and Sharidhar also published some data from Karnataka a couple of decades back. A decade later, the initial data that I talked to you about in the last 10 minutes was from 1987 to 1997. Then we looked at the next decade. And this we published in 2009 in Postgraduate Medical Journal. To our gratification, what we realized was that in this decade, diabetics were living longer. The quality of life was better. Complications were coming down in totality. And the loss of years between a diabetic and non-diabetic population was getting lesser in comparison to the earlier data, previous decades data. But what was a stark difference? What was a stark liking? That infections continue to be number one killers. They continue to be a predominant precipitating cause for ultimate mortality. And this again shows, if you look at the pink component, that's the sole factor infections contributing to death. And if you look at the green one, ultimately, contributing to death, as I was telling you, during that infective process, renal failure becoming much worse. Or somebody having an underlying renal dysfunction and now getting an infective process, either in handling a chronic renal disease, let's say doing a peritoneal dialysis repeatedly, develops someday an infection, or some other sort of an infection, a hospital-acquired infection, pneumonic sickness, urinary tract infection, and succumbing to that. And that's one thing that was stark again. And there's some data that we published a decade back in diabetes and metabolic syndrome, looking at overall patients presenting with infections to our hospital. And what we found out that longer duration of diabetes, presence of diabetic-specific complications, and older age would contribute to higher prevalence of infections and the lesser, the outcome being relatively much worse. If diabetes was longer, if a person was older, and if there was a comorbidity. Now, in the recent times, we have been looking at what COVID-19 has done. And for last 1 year now, we have been overwhelmed with what is happening. Now we know that risk of infections, particularly influenza and pneumonia, is higher in patients with diabetes. Now, diabetes necessarily is not associated with a hugely increased risk of these infections. But whenever they get infected, these infections usually are more severe than in non-diabetic population. And this was seen in the past also. If you look at data of H1N1 epidemic, if you look at data that SARS coronavirus, COVID virus, severe acute respiratory syndrome or Middle East respiratory syndrome related coronavirus. In both, in diabetics, the disease was more severe and mortality was more. And if you look at this data was published just immediately after the COVID started making its appearance in JAMA on about 72,000 guys. And of interest is for us is that if you look at that given time, the global mortality of diabetes overall was 2.3, but the mortality in diabetics was 7.3. Thankfully, in this 1 year, we have understood the mechanism of mortality in COVID-19 better. Now the mortality has decreased overall. In looking at the total deaths are occurring there. But if you look at the magnitude of the epidemic, the number of people getting involved, percentage death has decreased because now we understand the role of cytokine storm better. We understand how to handle the coagulopathy associated with it, and we give more customized care for the viral infection. A lot of debate on diabetics came on that, what is happening to the ACE2 inhibitor through which the COVID-19 virus may get into the cell and proliferate and then come back into the intravascular compartment and causing a lot of confusion on the role of ACE inhibitors and ARBs. But I think as of today, it's very well now clear that in COVID-19 times also, ACE inhibitors and ARBs should be continued as we use them otherwise. This is a lovely paper that was published recently by our own people, Ritesh Gupta, Mr. Ghosh, Avdesh Kumar from Kolkata, and Anup Mishra from New Delhi, summarizing about what is the current thinking about COVID and diabetes. So basic premise is that if diabetes is controlled well, probably, that patient population will behave like a non-diabetic population. Somebody's hemoglobin A1C is well controlled, does not have a significant organ damage, does not have a coexisting heart disease or kidney disease, probably outcomes would be same as a non-diabetic population. If their nutritional status is okay. Many people have now associated vitamin D deficiency with poor outcome, zinc deficiency with poor outcome, selenium deficiency with poor outcome. So that needs to be addressed to optimize the health of diabetic population during these COVID times. And then we know there are some influenza and pneumonia viruses that perennially keep on coming. So this year, the advice has been that everybody should get those vaccines regularly done so that there's no confusion between COVID and non-COVID respiratory viral infections. And now, thankfully, the nation has gone into a vaccination mode from yesterday, and hopefully we should be in a better situation in months to come. Thank you so much.